I never thought I would question the past, because grief has a way of making you accept things without asking too many questions. For years, I lived quietly, holding on to memories and trusting that what I had been told was the truth. I didn't dig deeper. I didn't doubt. I just kept going, believing I was doing the right thing. That winter evening felt ordinary at first. The air was cold, the kind that makes everything feel still. I was at home, alone, when there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, I almost ignored it. But something told me to open it. When I did, I saw a young girl standing there. She looked nervous, like she wasn't sure she was in the right place. Her eyes scanned my face, searching for something I didn't understand. I tried to stay calm and asked her who she was and why she was there. The way she looked at me, it didn't feel like a stranger's look. It felt deeper, almost like she was trying to recognize me. But then her confusion grew, and she said something that made my chest tighten. It wasn't just surprising, it didn't make sense. I felt a strange unease creeping in. Nothing about that moment felt normal. The way she spoke, the way she hesitated, it was like she had been told a completely different story than the one I had lived with for years. I invited her inside, trying to understand what was happening. My hands were slightly shaking, though I tried to hide it. I asked her simple questions, hoping her answers would clear things up. But instead, every word she said made things more confusing. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Not just a small misunderstanding, but something much bigger. Something that had been hidden from me for a long time. And deep down, I knew, this was only the beginning of the truth. 7 years earlier, my life changed in a way I could never prepare for. I received a phone call that no parent should ever get. The voice on the other end sounded serious and distant, and within seconds, everything around me felt like it stopped. I was told there had been an accident, and my daughter didn't survive. The days that followed felt empty and unreal. People came and went, offering comfort, but nothing truly reached me. I moved through everything like I was not fully there. The silence in my home became louder than anything else. During that time, the only person who stayed close was my son-in-law, Darian Holt. He handled things I couldn't. He spoke to people, arranged what needed to be done, and made sure I wasn't completely alone. I didn't have the strength to question anything. I just let him take control because I trusted him. A few days later, he came to see me again, and this time he brought a small child with him. He gently told me that this little girl was my granddaughter, Leor. I was shocked. I had no idea there was a child. But in that moment, I didn't question it. I was too broken to think clearly. The child was quiet and stayed close to him. She didn't speak much, just looked around with wide eyes. I remember trying to connect with her, but everything felt distant. Still, knowing she was part of my daughter gave me something to hold on to. From that point on, Darian and the child became the only family I had left. I held on to them tightly because I had already lost too much. I believed what I was told, and I didn't look for answers. At the time, trusting him felt like the only way to survive what I had just lost. After some time, things slowly settled into a routine. I didn't feel whole again, but I found a small sense of purpose in helping where I could. Darian often talked about how hard things had become. He said raising a child alone was not easy, especially with so many unexpected costs. He never asked for help directly at first. Instead, he would mention things in a careful way, how expenses kept growing, how he was trying his best to manage everything on his own. Listening to him, I started to feel responsible. I had the means to help, and it felt wrong not to. So one year, I decided to send money for the child's future. It felt like the right thing to do. I told myself it would give her stability, something I could no longer give my daughter. After that, it became a regular thing. Every year, I would send the same amount without hesitation. Darian always had reasons for why the money was needed. Sometimes it was for school-related costs, other times it was for health issues or moving to a better place. His explanations sounded reasonable, and I didn't see any reason to doubt him. I believed he was doing his best in a difficult situation. I never asked for proof or details. It didn't feel necessary. In my mind, helping them meant I was still connected to what I had lost. It gave me a sense of peace, like I was still playing a role in their lives, even from a distance. Over time, this support became part of my life. I didn't think of it as a burden. Instead, it felt like something I needed to do. It helped me cope in a quiet way, without having to face the emptiness too directly. I trusted him completely, and I never imagined there could be another side to the story. As the years went by, something started to feel off, even though I tried not to think about it too much. I realized I had never truly spent time with the child I was helping. Every time I asked to visit or meet her properly, there was always a reason why it couldn't happen. Sometimes Darian would say she wasn't feeling well. Other times, he would explain that they had to travel suddenly. There were also moments when he said she was going through emotional struggles and meeting new people would be too much for her. His reasons always sounded serious, and I didn't want to make things harder for them, so I accepted it. Still, a quiet doubt began to grow inside me. It wasn't loud enough to question everything, but it was there. I started to notice how every plan to meet her would fall apart at the last minute. It felt strange, but I kept telling myself there must be a good explanation. Then one evening during the winter, everything changed. It was late, and I was not expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I saw a young girl standing there alone. She looked unsure, almost like she had come to the wrong place. I studied her face carefully, trying to recognize something, anything. But there was nothing familiar. At the same time, she looked at me with the same confusion. It was clear that she didn't know who I was. There was also fear in her eyes, like she wasn't comfortable being there. That feeling didn't match the story I had been told for years. I had believed there was a connection between us, something real and strong. But in that moment, it felt like we were complete strangers. That was the first time I truly felt something was not right. Not just unclear, but deeply wrong. I guided her inside and tried to keep my voice calm. She stood near the door at first, unsure if she should sit or stay where she was. I offered her a glass of water, and after a moment, she slowly took it. Her hands were slightly shaking, which made me even more uneasy. I gently asked her name, hoping it would clear at least one thing. She looked at me for a second and said, "Tamsin." The name caught me off guard. I waited, thinking maybe she would explain, but she didn't. So I asked again, carefully, if she was sure. She nodded and repeated it. There was no hesitation in her voice. It was clear that this was her real name. Trying to understand more, I asked about her family. She mentioned her mother without any sadness, without the tone someone would have if they had lost a parent. She spoke in a simple, normal way, like her mother was still part of her life. That made my heart race. I asked where her mother was, and she answered in a way that didn't match anything I had believed for years. She said her mother was alive and living somewhere else. There was no confusion in her words. To her, it was a normal fact. I felt a cold wave of shock run through me. Nothing was lining up anymore. I asked if she knew who I was, hoping for some connection, but she shook her head. She had never heard my name before. Each answer she gave made this situation clearer in the worst possible way. This wasn't a small mistake or misunderstanding. The story I had trusted for so long was starting to fall apart right in front of me. At that moment, I understood something was very wrong, and the truth behind it was going to be much worse than I had imagined. That night, after the girl left, I couldn't sit still. My mind kept going over everything I had just heard. I knew I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers, real ones this time. Not stories, not explanations, facts. The next morning, I started with the accident. I went through old papers, emails, and anything I had saved from that time. At first, it all looked normal, just like I remembered. But when I looked closer, small details didn't match. The report I had didn't include much information. It was short and unclear. There were no proper details about where exactly it happened or who handled the case. That felt strange to me. Something like that should have been clearly documented. I tried to find more official records. I contacted offices that should have had information. Some couldn't find anything. Others gave me answers that didn't match each other. Every time I thought I was getting close, something didn't line up. Then I looked for a death certificate. I realized I had never actually seen one myself. I had trusted what I was told and never asked for proof. When I tried to verify it, there was nothing solid. No clear record that I could confirm with confidence. That's when the fear really started to grow. It didn't feel like a missing detail anymore. It felt like something had been hidden on purpose. I went back to the timeline in my head, thinking about how everything had happened. The calls, the information, the way things were handled, it all started to seem too controlled, too carefully managed. The more I searched, the less I found. And that was the most disturbing part. It was like the truth had been erased, leaving only a story behind. Slowly, piece by piece, what I had believed for years began to break apart. I knew I couldn't rely on memories anymore, so I focused on Darian. I started searching for his background, something I had never done before. At first, it felt wrong, like I was betraying someone I had trusted for years. But I pushed that feeling aside and kept going. What I found was not what I expected. His name appeared in places that had nothing to do with a normal life. There were records tied to different identities, slight changes in names that still pointed back to him. It took time to connect everything, but once I did, a pattern became clear. He had been involved in financial scams before. Situations where people trusted him, gave him money, and later realized they had been lied to. The details were different each time, but the method felt the same. Gain trust, create a story, and then take advantage of it. My hands felt cold as I kept reading. I couldn't believe I had never looked into this before. I had accepted everything without question. Then I turned my attention to the money I had sent over the years. I reviewed transfers, dates, and amounts. When I compared them with the timeline of his claims, things didn't match. There was no clear link between the money and the reasons he had given me. It became obvious that the money wasn't being used the way I had believed. There was no sign of it going toward a child's needs. Instead, it pointed toward personal use, things that had nothing to do with care or responsibility. The most painful thought came last. If everything else was a lie, then maybe the biggest part of the story was too. The idea that my daughter's disappearance was not real started to take shape in my mind. It felt unbearable, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. The truth was finally coming into focus. I kept going deeper, even when every step made things harder to accept. I followed the financial trail more carefully, looking at where the money moved after it left my account. It took time, but patterns started to appear. There were transfers that didn't make sense at first. Money was being moved through different accounts before it finally settled somewhere else. I traced those accounts one by one, and what I found made my stomach drop. Some of them were connected to Darian, just under slightly different details. But others led to a name I never expected to see again. It was her name. Not in the past, not in old records, but active, recent, and clearly being used. I checked again, hoping I had made a mistake. But everything matched. The timing, the transactions, the links between accounts, it all pointed to the same truth. They were connected. The money I had been sending wasn't just disappearing. It was being shared. Carefully moved, hidden, and used without raising attention. It wasn't random. It was planned. I sat there staring at the records, trying to understand how long this had been going on. It wasn't something recent. It had been happening for years, quietly, without me noticing. Every excuse, every explanation, every moment of comfort I had been given started to feel fake. The sadness I had seen, the struggles I thought were real, it all felt like part of something designed to keep me from asking questions. Nothing about it was accidental. It was organized, controlled, and repeated again and again. That's when the full truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about lies anymore. It was something much bigger, something built over time with one clear purpose. And I had been at the center of it without even knowing. I didn't act right away. As much as I wanted to confront them, I knew that would only give them a chance to disappear again. I needed to be careful and think clearly. This time, I wasn't going to let emotions control my decisions. I decided to stay quiet and pretend everything was normal. When I spoke to Darian, I didn't change my tone or ask any questions that could make him suspicious. I listened, just like before, and let him believe I still trusted him. Then I told him something that caught his attention. I said I was planning to send a larger amount of money soon, something that could help secure the future properly. I made it sound like a thoughtful decision, like I was finally doing something big for the family. He didn't question it. In fact, he seemed eager. That reaction told me I was on the right path. While he was focused on the money, I started making quiet arrangements. I reached out to professionals who knew how to handle situations like this. I shared everything I had found, every record, every detail. They took it seriously and began preparing the next steps. We agreed on a plan that would bring everything into the open without giving them a chance to escape. It had to be done carefully and at the right moment. I kept the conversation going with Darian, setting a time and place where the transfer would happen. I made sure everything sounded simple and believable. At the same time, the people helping me were getting ready behind the scenes. It wasn't easy to stay calm during this. Every part of me wanted to end it immediately. But I knew patience was the only way to make sure the truth came out fully. This time, I was in control. And I was ready to make sure there was no way out for them. The day everything came together felt heavier than I expected. I tried to stay calm, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept telling myself to focus and not let emotions take over, because this time there was no turning back. When Darian arrived, he acted normal at first. He smiled like nothing had changed, like everything was still under his control. He spoke casually, asking about the transfer and making small talk, completely unaware of what was waiting for him. The moment he stepped further inside, everything shifted. People came forward and identified themselves. His expression changed instantly. The confidence disappeared from his face, replaced by shock and confusion. He tried to speak, but his words didn't come out the same way anymore. Everything moved quickly after that. He was taken aside, and the situation I had been carrying alone for so long finally came into the open. There was no more hiding, no more stories, no more explanations that didn't make sense. Later, I learned that Marisol had also been found. She was taken in as well, and the truth that had been buried for years could no longer stay hidden. It felt strange hearing it out loud, like a weight I had carried for so long was finally being acknowledged. But instead of feeling relief right away, I felt empty. So many years of my life had been built on something that wasn't real. The person I thought I knew, the family I believed I had, the grief I lived with, it all felt different now. Still, in that emptiness, there was also clarity. I understood that I had been living inside a story that was never mine. Accepting that was painful, but it also gave me something I hadn't felt in years: control over my own life again. The child who had unknowingly brought everything to light was finally safe. I made sure of that. She would not grow up inside lies or confusion anymore. In the end, I didn't get back what I lost, but I found something else. I found truth, and with it, a chance to start again.